All right. So before we get into it, these are our opinions, not the opinions of My Real Estate Show, not the opinions of My Real Estate Company or any of its subsidiaries, not any entity connected to it either, just ours. So let's go. Today, we're walking in a little hot. Federal judge told Zillow and Redfin their FTC antitrust headache is not going anywhere anytime soon. Mortgage rates are wobbling while spring officially flatlines on Inman's own pipeline tracker. And the Philly real estate influencer couple selling get rich quick mentorships just got federally indicted for an alleged Cleveland Ponzi. Let's get to it. All right. I am your host at My Real Estate Show, Sandy Lynn Burnett, and I am CEO of My Real Estate Company. It is a brokerage that spanned 7 states in 7 months. We just opened our 8th state, so that's pretty exciting. I created this brokerage after just seeing all the ways that brokerages have failed agents and their consumers and clients in the past. I'm joined by my co-hosts, Josh Reese and Carl.
Yeah, Carl's here.
Introduce yourself, Josh.
I'm Josh Reese, the Director of Advancement at My Real Estate Company. I'm also a lead generation consultant, Inman contributor, and I met Sandy Lynn because a business partner threatened to burn my house down if I didn't join My Real Estate Company. So I did what I should do and saved my house and joined the company.
Smart man, Josh, smart man. So our first topic of the day is the FTC versus Zillow. So a federal judge in Virginia denied Zillow and Redfin's motion to dismiss the FTC's antitrust case over the alleged $100 million pay not to compete deal in multifamily rental housing. I'd almost forgotten about this. Riz Media's May 11 court report confirmed the ruling stands. The court found the FTC's complaint states plausible antitrust claims, sending the case into discovery. Zillow and Redfin argued the deal actually helped renters and property managers by letting Redfin focus on improving its own product. The judge was not buying this. Errol Samuelson, Zillow's chief industry development officer, has been steadily defending Zillow's positions publicly. But private antitrust discovery is where the temperature really goes up. What are your thoughts, Josh?
Wowzer. This, to me, is definitely a sign of things to come within our industry, especially as we see all these acquisitions happening. We're going to start seeing this a lot more because, let's face it, the closer you make these mega corporations, through acquisitions or buyouts or even just co-venture deals, it's going to get a ton of regulatory heat on them because we're getting close to that, monopoly title. So I think this is just the sign of things to come within this industry as we start seeing all these, bigger businesses become bigger businesses.
And what I find interesting is, and I believe I did a true crime and real estate episode on this about how the portals and their AI and everything are ruling like everything. So if you needed more proof that the portals are running the industry from the top down, here you go. Zillow allegedly cuts a check for $100 million. Redfin allegedly steps out of the ring, and the renters and us agents are the ones like eating the cost. It's exactly why brokerages like ours have tried so hard to dig deeper in what's actually going on. I think it's so important that real estate agents stay up on news like this because I bet shit like this has always been going on, but we didn't have the technology to discover it and report on it and consume the news. Like we would just consume newspapers or whatever, like they thought was important enough to write about, right? And so I think now that this stuff is, consumables, some of the shit that we talk about would be like just released 22 minutes before our episode, like the AGNT EXP taking out, or buying out Next Home and stuff like that, right? That broke 22 minutes before we started our episode last week. And so I think the fact that these news outlets can report on things, and people, if you choose to consume the news properly in your industry and stay a little bit ahead of the curve, you can kind of start to damn near predict the future with this. So the FTC did not fold, and neither should anybody watching this happen. It's there in place to keep bullshit like this out. If this is actually true, if they tried to cut that check to Redfin and be like, hey, just mind your own business, look the other way while we take over in this market, that's like scary.
I think there's two things too that agents should take away from this. The first one being transparency is the new name of the game within the industry. Ever since that lawsuit and all that happened, the consumers and the courts, more importantly, have said, we want transparency now. And consumers are getting it, which me personally, I think is great. But I think agents need to understand that transparency is going to go to you, your transactions. People have access to more information now than ever. I had my first closing recently where I actually had a client ask for all the documents from the whole entire transaction, to include email correspondence, which that one we had to get a little bit in the weeds with because there's some privacy issues there between the other agent and myself. But ultimately, clients are going to start asking for these things. And so I think agents can prepare themselves by just being transparent from go. Don't try to hide stuff, because you're not going to be able to anymore. It used to be if you wanted to hide something, the only way to get it would be a subpoena, which required attorneys and all that type of stuff. Now, a lot of this stuff is so transparent, and our industry is pushing that way, which I think is great. The number two thing that I think is interesting about this one is that this is targeting renters. This isn't buyers and sellers anymore. So now this is dragging a whole nother sector into the lawsuit merger type.
I would dare say a weaker sector.
Exactly. So I think what Zillow has really done is now they're pushing the rental game into this. So now we have a whole category of housing where Zillow is really kind of trying to be the puppet master of this whole thing. And I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens, especially for those agents in states where rentals are a big deal. Me personally, both states I've ever been licensed in, we didn't really do rentals. So it wasn't a thing a real estate agent did. But a lot of states, agents are heavy in rentals. And I think this could really affect their business if they're not paying attention to it, and asking themselves, what can I do to get myself out in front of this change to really keep my business if you're heavy on the rental side of things.
I agree with that. Now, I found this next topic to be interesting. Actually, I want to go back to this. Tell me what happened when your client asked for all the correspondence. What vibe did you get when they were asking for the correspondence and all the records? And then how did you handle that? Because if this is probably something agents can learn.
So for me personally, it didn't surprise me. I've been working with these clients for a long enough time. They were very, very involved in the process, and they really wanted to be involved. He has a background in sales kind of, but in like litigation with sales. So it wasn't surprising to me. I had zero problem providing him with all the paperwork and stuff for the transaction. The one thing that he asked for, which some of it I didn't want to give to him because there was a privacy issue between the emails that the other agent was sending me. So what I ended up doing is sending him the redacted emails of just my responses and how that went. So he had all that information. If anything ever comes up, we can always point back to a specific email now, and he can get the full email from the other agent on the other
I have a
side.
question though.
Yeah.
What did you owe that other agent any privacy? Like, tell me about that. What
So
helped make that decision?
to me, I basically looked at from the standpoint of, I have a fiduciary duty to my client, but he also has a fiduciary duty to his client. And some of the things, in my opinion, when I really looked at his emails, I thought there were some things in there that could potentially violate not talking to me about it, but then showing my clients his fiduciary duty. And so
Interesting.
I just decided that I would do it and handle it in this way and say, hey, Mr. Client, if anything arises and we need emails, you can see the email thread of what I said. We can then go back and get those if we really need to. But it was actually the first time I've ever dealt with this. And I actually will provide most transactions when it's all done. I give my clients a thumb drive that has all the real estate paperwork and everything in it, just so they have copies of it. I think that's, the most transparent way to do it. But I never had anybody ask for emails back and forth. And I had to do a little bit of research and really think about, who has a duty to what and where. And I also think that it's something that brokerages need to take into account, talking with their brokers and their leaders, that this is becoming more common because people are asking for these things. So my client was great and was like, no, I totally understand. Once I explained that to him, I said, you're the first person I've ever dealt with this. If we need to escalate and really get, if you want everything, we'll figure it out if we can. But he was fine with what we did. So I just provided him my emails and redacted the listing agent's emails. So he was happy with that, but it was a different situation. I've never dealt with a client asking me for those documents before.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. It kind of blows my mind how agents will still share too much to the other agent about their client's situation. You think like, hello, like it's crazy because didn't we all go to the same real estate school? You know what I mean? And it's amazing. And sometimes they'll even just share screenshots of their clients
Yeah.
asking about something and then just sending it and be like, let me know. And it's like, does your fucking client know that you screenshotted what they said and sent it to the other agent? Like, I never ever do that. That said, I will sometimes screenshot what the agent said and send it to my clients and be like, hey, here's exactly what they said about whatever, whatever. So I do think that that's a very interesting take as far as yes, your fiduciary duty is to your client. We can all agree on that. But there is sensitivity involving your relationship with the agent and the potential shitstorm that could ensue if you just sent all their communications over.
Yeah. And I think for me, it was a fine line too, because you're trying to build rapport with these agents in your market.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to, build rapport and be the agent that when they see your listing, they're like, oh, he's a good guy. I'll write an offer. Or when I submit an offer on their listing, they tell their clients, like, hey, I've worked with this agent before, super smooth transaction. So it's that fine line, I think. But I think ultimately for me, it had to go back to, I had to look at what duty is owed to my client and my fiduciary duty, first of all. And then I also had to run it through, like, if I divulge any of this information that was a private email between me and the other agent, is that violating his fiduciary duty to his clients? And that's where, I think we just need to be careful. But I do think transparency is so important. If you're like, well, no, you can't get all that information, it's like, well, what are you trying to hide? And I feel like in those situations, the more you just explain it to your clients, like, hey, I have a fiduciary duty to you, and I'm not going to divulge like your emails to the other side. I'm not going to say that. Those were private between us. Now, yes, the transaction's over. Ultimately, if they want to go to court and get a subpoena, they could probably get them. I'm just not going to give over our communications to that other side. And I'm also going to protect the fact that, like, I'm not going to give you their private information either. Even though it was shared with me, there's still some things like that agent, I think, said some things that I would never say publicly about my client. So, I wanted to protect that relationship as well. But it is this balancing act, of fiduciary duty with what client and with the other side, and still maintaining good rapport with the agents in your market, especially in a smaller market.
That's super interesting. And I wonder how many agents this is going to happen to, because like ChatGPT is going to tell their clients, make sure you ask for this, right?
Yeah.
And so that is like a given. So I'm curious to see how these agents are going to handle it. They're not all going to handle it with the same amount of intelligence that you did, unless they're listening to the show.
Yeah. That's why you listen to this show.
Yeah.
Gain some intelligence.
Okay, so here's the next topic, which I found a little interesting because some people at our brokerage are heating up, but then other people are talking about their pipelines are still empty. Intel client pipeline tracker hits the lowest reading since the November shutdown. Inman's April client pipeline tracker dropped to its lowest level since November, when a government shutdown briefly froze agents. Spring 2026 is officially a dud. That's what they're declaring it. Agents from coast to coast told Inman the rough start to spring extended through April and into early May. So I find this interesting because it's not like a regional story. It's not like, hey, this is only happening in California where the market's dead or whatever. Pipelines are thin across the country. The contracts are falling through left and right. And I've seen a lot of that happen coming. I have the .loop admin access where I'm not necessarily in it, but I see notifications coming through. So-and-so signed termination, or whatever. And I'm like, damn. The only thing inflating top line industry data is the new Compass Anywhere combined footprint, masking individual brokerage weakness underneath the merger headlines. So I just found that interesting. What are your thoughts on this? I didn't even know Inman had a client pipeline tracker or anything like that.
I feel bad too because I contribute for them, and I didn't even know they had such a thing. So, I think it's interesting what I'm seeing doing consulting with people and brokerages and teams. What I'm seeing is the people that really understand lead nurture and follow up and follow through are fine right now. The people who are struggling are the ones that are kind of new, or they got into the industry in the craziness of 4 or 5 years ago and haven't had to develop those skills. So I think that's really interesting where we have this clear cut, like agents that get it and agents that don't. And the agents that don't are really struggling. But yet I see the agents that get it, they're thriving right now. And another part of this is we're seeing, I think a lot of this comes back to the cancellation contracts and all those type of stuff, is unrealistic expectations that buyers and sellers have in the current market. And both of these topics, I see are training issues within brokerages. And I started seeing this a couple years ago when the market shifted and transactions went down. The first thing that got cut from brokerages was their training budgets. And their brokers who they were relying on for training, because transactions went down, were like, well, crap, I need to step back into production to, really make what I was making before. So the brokers stepped out of training. They weren't training their people. And it's caused this, I think, on both sides of the coin, very unrealistic expectations. And I think that's why we're seeing the terminations. I think one of the big things we're seeing in my market is pricing issues where houses are being priced so high. They're being priced at like 2022 levels and not 2026 levels. And they get no action. And then people are terminating contracts because they're like, I was told that I could get this sales price, and now you're telling me I have to be $100,000 low to even get someone to look at it. So I think it's interesting. I think to a certain extent I think it's being exaggerated a little bit, because I think we're in a time right now where we're going to start seeing a thinning of the herd within real estate. And this is a way that we're seeing those real estate agents that aren't taking their training serious, aren't taking the job as a job. They just want to, they should be in a 9 to 5.
Got in this for freedom.
Exactly.
That means I shouldn't have to do what I don't want to do when I don't want to do it.
Exactly. Or I only want to do the things that I'm good at. And those are the agents that are struggling. And I think this is kind of a thinning of the herd, because what I'm seeing is the agents that were successful before are still successful. Yeah, there might be a slight drop in their production, but I'm not seeing much. I'm seeing those agents that were killing it before, they're still killing it. I just talked to a guy in Oregon in my old market. He was actually a mentor of mine, solo agent, phenomenal nurturing his clients, phenomenal follow-up. He just put 16 new listings out over the last 2 weeks as a solo agent. And he's got like 3 or 4 buyer contracts under contract in that time. And his properties are priced well. So the ones he's putting out on the market are selling very, very quickly. And I think for that, he's been in the industry a long time, but it really just comes to education and training and teaching agents how to really, do their job.
Yeah. So we have a true crime and real estate podcast, and I think it'll be cool to kind of touch on some of these things in my real estate show if either it won't make a full true crime and real estate episode, or if it's an ongoing case that it's like, hey, we'll probably report on this like full thing in an episode of true crime and real estate later on. So if you guys are following any of this stuff, just know federal prosecutors indicted Philadelphia. I almost said Filipina. Federal prosecutors indicted Philadelphia-based real
Can you
estate.
point to that on a map?
I couldn't point to either one of them if you asked me. Gregory and Danielle Nikki Parker on 3 counts of wire fraud and conspiracy to commit wire fraud. Philadelphia Inquirer reported the indictment was unsealed Friday after the Parkers were arrested in Camden, New Jersey. The grand jury was seated in the Northern District of Ohio. Prosecutors allege the couple ran a Ponzi scheme, sounds familiar in real estate, tied to the Cleveland investment properties pitched as The Land, promising 20% monthly rental returns. The indictment alleges the Parkers lulled investors with small payments while diverting funds to lease a private jet. One filing cited $23,490 and a fleet of 11 leased luxury cars at roughly almost 20 grand per month combined. 11 leased luxury cars. So this was a second wave on the Parker story. The Inquirer first broke the alleged scam pattern in 2023 in a long-form investigation. That was back when it was the Inquirer, and now it's made real news when shit's actually going down. Civil RICO cases were already actually running. The federal indictment is the criminal escalation. The Parkers have denied any wrongdoing in prior civil filings and are entitled to a presumption of innocence. Okay, what are we looking at here, Brian? Cleveland.com. Okay. So using the Instagram handle, what? Big business. Oh my God. So every time someone, I think the lesson here, every time someone tells like a brand new agent they can rehab Cleveland for 20% monthly returns, I think you should screenshot it because they're probably going to fuck you over or fuck that guy over or whatever. That's absolutely ridiculous. That's the pitch deck of like, you know what, we should come up with a Ponzi scheme pitch deck. And the first one's going to be like, here you're going to have these amazing returns on this. It's, a minimal investment. Everybody's doing it. Everybody got all these amazing returns. I'm a, uncertified Instagram coach, but don't check my credentials, all this shit, right? I bet I actually want to develop some Ponzi pitch deck that's like, you guys, if you're going to run a Ponzi scheme, just use this because it's textbook anymore. We can see all the red flags because we coach on it in our True Crime and Real Estate podcast, but I just find it very interesting. Does the Instagram handle big business fall under the same rule as having boss in your name? Absolutely.
Yeah. I think this is a prime example of teaching agents like you've been in the business for 5 minutes. Now you need to divest and get multiple streams of income and all this type of stuff. And people get sucked into it. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, but I think there's a time and a place, and you need to actually have a level of competency before you start going down that path. In whatever you choose to, if it's coaching, investing, whatever, you need to have a certain level of competency because we are seeing a lot of these agents that are getting drug into these schemes. And like we've talked about before, I don't think it's ever their intention from go, like, hey, I'm going to start a Ponzi scheme or I'm going to do some type of scam to scam people. But they get into it and all of a sudden they got to keep up with the Joneses and need 11 leased cars. And now you have to perpetuate the scheme to keep it going. I think it's a big problem in our industry where, everybody's a coach, everybody wants to do this, that, or the other thing. And at the end of the day, focus on selling real estate and getting really good at real estate. For example, that guy that I just talked about that was a mentor of mine, 11 active listings as a solo agent, and he has a very, very high close rate, and he does this year round. He makes a ton of money, and he would be a phenomenal one to be a real estate coach. But I've asked him before, why don't you do that? And he's like, because I make more money selling real estate. Why would I deviate from that? You know, and he has other investments and things, but I think all too often we just kind of skip that step, and it's like, oh, you have 2 years, you sold 3 homes, you're going to be a real estate coach now. It's like, what?
And I think it's like it's sad that it's like the those who can't teach mentality. It's so true. Where are you? Why haven't you been selling houses and everything? What actually, I always take top producer out of anything anybody writes about me because I've never been a top producer. I've been a pretty good producer. I've always made six figures as long as I can remember every year, and especially in Iowa, that ain't bad, but I wouldn't consider myself a top producer. I'm not in the top, like, we have 1,100 agents. I consider the top producers the top 10 to 20 agents. I've never been in the top to 10 to 20 agents in our market. And that's not where my path has led me. I do think that there's a certain lifestyle that you have to lead in order to become a top producer. And, I did the churn and burn for so many years, and I'm glad that I'm in a different part of my real estate career now. But it is so interesting. I don't think you were in on this interview, but Holly and I interviewed somebody out of Colorado, I believe. He signed up for our brokerage, and this should go to show you guys, like, we only hire who we think are the best agents and brokers. But he signed up on our application, and we interview every agent. But this guy wanted to be a broker, and he wanted to be like an agent trainer at our brokerage. And this guy fumble fucked through his words. He had like the lowest confidence. He's just like, well, I was in the Army. Like, I'm sorry, dude, that's not going to get you very far at this brokerage. Like, what else do you bring to the table, And he's like, so I was in the Army, so I know how to lead. But he kept like ending all of his sentences like this. And I'm like, I don't think you know how to lead, bro. So just saying you know how to lead, just saying, hey, I was in the Army, like, Brian and I know there are a lot of veterans that are fucking shitbags. I served in the generation that it was like, with judges, go to jail or go in the Marine Corps. Like, these are the type of fucking weirdos that I was serving with, So veterans are very, like, I love me some veterans and stuff, but not if that's what you lead with as your entire identity and your credentials. And I'm like, you're fucking interviewing at a real estate brokerage for a broker position. Like, what do you want? And so it was just, I could just tell, it was interesting. But yeah, he was one of those walking examples of those who can't teach. I think he sold like 3 houses the year before. And I'm like, well, what do you're not even like brokering anybody yet. You did 3 houses. What do you want to exactly teach them?
Yeah.
So it's just interesting. You can tell a lot about somebody by just your interaction with them. Like, you and I had a great interview together, except for some unfortunate mishaps of threats of bodily harm to you and your family. And I think what was funny is, like, that wasn't even me that did it. Like, I'm considered intimidating sometimes, and I'm not even the one that did that.
Yeah. Well, and to go back to your top producer thing, it reminds me, about a year ago, I had someone reach out to me that wanted some lead gen consulting type stuff done. And he was a lender. And I looked him up on Instagram, and he had, like, everyone puts like top 1% in their market. He had taken it to a new level. He was now the top 0.1% in his market. And I looked him up, and he was like in like Podunk, Nebraska. And in his market, there was like 3 real estate agents, and he was the only lender that I could find that advertised himself in that town. So I know probably there were some other ones, but I'm like, that's not really a brag, my man. you know, you're in Podunk. Yeah.
The only person there that's like
Like
available to do loans.
you do 100% of the 3 loans that happen in your town. That's not like, you know, but I think that's where we've gotten to as an industry. The interesting thing I'm seeing now is like it used to be clients would be like, "Oh, he's the top 1%. I want to hire him." And now I think clients like, who's not in the top 1% of real estate? Because everybody is. I think now you differentiate yourself more if you talk about how you've helped people with their problems over, how many houses you've sold.
Absolutely. All right. I think this is a good time to close us out. Do you have anything before I close this out, Josh?
No, I think we covered some like really good stuff. Transparency, super important. Training, super important. And don't call yourself a top producer because you just sound stupid.
If you're not
Yeah.
one.
Even if you are, I'd
If
say
you
don't.
are
Like,
one, make sure other people call you a top producer.
Yeah. If other people do, that's great, but not yourself.
I will say it's one of the reasons that was nice when I started a team, which I no longer, operate a team anymore. Since I operate an entire fucking brokerage, but the team aspect, it was nice to have the team post about my accolades instead of me being like, I sold this many houses and I helped this many clients. Like, I hate those I posts where I get it. You have to put yourself out there and post your accolades so that people, you establish that credibility out there. But it was always so cringy doing it for yourself. So even if I was managing my own social media on the team page, which usually my VA was, but like, even if I was posting it, it was coming from the team, the team recognizing, me or another agent or whatever. So I would say, if you're gonna, make sure that you're recognized for it, have another entity post about, ask your brokerage to post about it. Your brokerage should be posting about you. So, all right. Well, that's where we leave it today. Many stories, many lawsuits, one alleged Ponzi. And, we didn't talk about this. We talked about this yesterday, but there's, 2 associations that merged in Florida that combined into the world's largest association. It's pending NAR approval, but it's down in Miami. So that was pretty interesting. And I'm sure we'll talk about it again this week. So NAR did catch a win. And I want to read about this case tomorrow because the other side's lawyer allegedly leaned on AI hallucinated case law.
Hey, didn't we talk about that like a couple days ago when you get sued and you say, "Who'd you learn this from?" and you say the AI chatbot?
Exactly. That, write my contract, like AI wrote my contract, like get me out of this. Yeah, nice try.
Mark that up as another prediction for me, right?
Exactly. So if anything from today hit a nerve, feel free to send our episodes, our clips out there. We are available everywhere you get your podcasts. Please follow, please also review wherever you listen. It really does help. So we'll see you at the same time tomorrow. Take care.
See you guys tomorrow.